right, we'll call the meeting to order.
Start with the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, are there any changes, any motions to make any changes to the preview or consent agenda? Okay, we need to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Audience delegation. Susan, you said we did not have any?
We do not.
Okay. And recognitions. You go ahead and do that and I'll get the
Okay. So we're privileged tonight to recognize Mrs. Susan Brooker, who has received the honor of the National Association of Education Office Professionals. She's the professional of the year. So it's quite an honor. It's a national organization. So we'd like to recognize Susan tonight. They actually had a virtual conference last week. And Susan was recognized, and so we would like to recognize her tonight. We have a banner, and Tina got some flowers.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
And then we have
Gorgeous.
Stand up.
we have
Oh,
a
you have to stand up. Do I get it?
Do you want me to set them
Thank
over
you.
there? Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
When we say it, that's huge.
that is huge.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Very shocked and surprised.
All right. Moving on down to monthly information items. We'll start with the expenditure report. Revenue report, any questions? Okay. Assessment and evaluation of district programs.
Okay, this report is as of June 30, and of course it is pre-audit, so there shouldn't be many changes. Everything's pretty much posted up, but just we will have the auditors come in August, so we'll know then if we need any adjustments. Current year taxes are exceed budget by about $40,000. Delinquent collected taxes exceeded budget by about $444,000. So that helped our numbers right there as far as revenues coming in. The state formula dollars were falling under budget by 1.85% or about $134,000. Prop C, we're going to finish the year with a positive variance of about $4,000. And classroom trust fund, again, we didn't receive any monies in June, so we have a deficit of about $173,000. Revenues came in under budget, around saving about 5% overall in funds 1 and 2. The ending projected fund balance percentage is 20.48 at the end of June, and our total cash and investments are $10.6 million.
Any questions for Kathy? Thank you, Kathy. Strategic planning.
So we were fortunate. We had a board work session last week where we focused on our new policy services, and we will talk about that a little bit later. But we had Dwayne Martin here from Ed Council who presented those changes and worked us through that process a little bit, what the differences were there. Also, of course, we've been spending a lot of time with the task force, and so that will be part of that conversation coming up next. So that's what I have for strategic planning.
With that being said, why don't we roll right into strategic, or the task force recommendations?
Okay. Let's see.
Oh, yep, we need a motion, I'm sorry.
Move to approve the recommendations from the reentry task force as presented.
Second.
Okay. So if you pull up the second document there, which is the back to school plan presentation, that's actually the document that I'm going to be working from. That will be on the presenter there. So this is what the task force recommendations came up with. Now I will say first and foremost, this is a living document. This document can change. Plans can change. Of course, this is an unprecedented task for all of us, and something that our country has not seen before. I guess 1918, I'm a history person, so I like to compare it a little bit to the Spanish flu, but school looked a lot different in 1918, right? We didn't have, we had one-room schoolhouses and didn't provide a lot of the services that we now provide for students. So with that in mind, again, this is unprecedented. So our goal, first and foremost, was to address the safety of our students, our staff, and to plan for the worst and hope for the best. And that was kind of our mantra as we moved throughout this planning process. And this is not, I'd like to say this is the end, but I don't think this is the end of planning. We continue to address those concerns. So we followed the principles, the guidelines of several organizations. Obviously, it's a medical thing, so we consulted medical professionals with the CDC Guidelines. Cass County Health has provided a lot of resources for us. The Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, along with Department of Health and Senior Services, provided a lot of resource as well. And then the American Association of, or American Academy of Pediatrics. I won't call it association, but it's American Academy of Pediatrics. And so these are the things that we addressed. We talked about the increased disinfecting and hygiene protocols. And I know Mike and his crew have done a tremendous job of not only cleaning the buildings and preparing the buildings, but also preparing for when the students are there, how we can address those disinfecting needs. And so a lot of times we talk about cleaning. Well, cleaning, and I know Mike emphasizes this a lot, and this is good, cleaning and disinfecting are two different things. So running a vacuum is not the same thing as disinfecting. And so disinfecting is something that we can do in a short amount of time. When you think about disinfecting, a lot of times we think of Lysol spray, right? We can spray it on there. It has to sit for so long that it kills the germs that are on the surface. And so that's the disinfecting process. And we have products for that in each of the classrooms and areas that will be provided. And that was probably the number one concern when we surveyed our parents, right? Was to make sure that is part of our process, and to make sure that it's increased and consistent. So with that in mind, I guess I should flash back a little bit and say that our goal all along was to make sure that we provided a plan where students could come back to school in person. So we have options for parents and families, and those options include an in-person 5 days a week plan, where masks or face coverings will be required in certain circumstances. So if the student is on the bus, they can't social distance, we're going to require them to wear a mask or a face covering. If they are in a classroom, they're one-on-one, or they're close like we are in this situation, where they're less than that 3 to 6 foot range for long periods of time, they're in that area that's a concern, and so that they'll be required to wear a face mask in that situation. We have an online option for families as well. So our virtual option for students who are in kindergarten will start at the lowest level. So students who are in kindergarten will actually have an online instructor, a virtual instructor that's a teacher. There's not any third-party vendor for that age group, and so Then when we get to grades 1 through 3, the students at HES will, if they choose to go virtual, will have what's called Launch, which Launch is a program provided from Springfield Public Schools, and we had experience using it last year. Had good success with it. It uses Missouri teachers, Missouri learning standards, so we feel like it's tied to the same standards that we follow, and so there's that close relationship. We'll have somebody in each of the buildings who helps administer that virtual education, works with the parents, and makes that relationship strong. So, and then when we go from our McEwen students, which are grade 4 all the way through grade 12, we will use Odysseyware, which we have used for quite a while for students at Wildcat Academy, and we've used it for other students. The summer school option for students who took, for example, personal finance, health, they can take that through Odysseyware. So we've had good experience, and basically we'll have a contact person at each of those buildings as well. People who are already familiar with that vendor. And they will assign the standards and the coursework and make sure that it's aligned with where we want our students to progress. And so, and people may ask, well, why are you using a third-party vendor for the? Well, we've got teachers that are teaching, right? They're going to be teaching 7-8 hours a day. So, at that point, we don't expect them to go home and then also teach another class virtually online. It's just not practical. So we have certain staff that are assigned again to administer that and help with those. We want to create choice is essentially what we're doing. We're trying to create choice for families and parents when they see what the requirements are coming to school and what that looks like. If they don't feel comfortable, then they can stay home and still receive a quality education. That's our goal. So, and then let's see, that's our resources. Again, we surveyed the staff and the families. We will have those surveys available on the website too. We have links that will be released tomorrow. So the parents will have the choice Monday through Friday in person, virtually. We will provide devices for those who choose virtual. We do have devices for all students, K through 12 essentially. We have enough devices for that. Typically we're going to administer devices primarily for home use for the middle school and high school students. The others will be cart-based unless they're virtual, unless we're required to not have in-person classes anymore. So something new that we will be providing at the middle school, high school, CCC, and CCC has done this, and the high school is the block scheduling. They had a little modified block at the high school as last year. CCC obviously with their majority of their courses have been block schedule, so that's not unusual for them. We're going to go all block middle school through high school, and that's going to reduce the transitions between classes. So students will be in their class longer each day. So they'll have 8 blocks. They'll have 4 on A day and 4 on blocks on a B day, and so they will alternate days back and forth all the way through. The elementary classes will be remain in their cohorts as much as possible. Limited interactions with other classes. We're going to follow those safety guidelines as close as we can. And we've said that we cannot guarantee that 6-foot range that the CDC has talked about, and so that's why in certain circumstances we will have those masks. Something that's different for the virtual students again this year, just lessons learned from last spring. New material is going to be presented. Grades will be given on assignments and tests. They'll be based on those Missouri learning standards. So. But what we're going to ask is that people make that decision. Let's see, I'm going to go through here. Let's go to the virtual learning slide next. Sorry, I'm jumping all around, Kathy, on you. Let's go to the virtual learning slide. So that explains what they are, how they're paced. Odysseyware is what I would call on demand. When we say self-paced, I would say that it's on demand. And so,
Up or down?
sorry, Kathy, I'm running you all over the place. So, OdysseyWare is what we would say is on-demand and self-paced. So, students will progress at their pace through the assignments that are selected that are appropriate for their age and that. Launch is actually with an instructor, and so the instructor is not going to be completely engaged. In other words, we're not going to put a first grade student in front of a computer for 6 hours a day. That's not what the expectation is. There'll be a limited time where they're given direct instruction, then they'll go work on their own and then interact with the instructor that way. So that's how launch works. So just a little bit different. So OdysseyWare is actually a vendor that, without an actual interaction with an instructor through Zoom or anything like that, or any kind of face-to-face interaction. Whereas Launch is face-to-face interaction and some of the others. So, and then of course, the kindergarten will use Google Classroom and Meet. Taught by an ECC staff member. It'll include online components and then worksheets. So the in-person, that's the next slide down. Again, social distancing is encouraged. We'll use those strategies. We're going to use the arrows, the pathways in the buildings so that we're all going the same direction. We're going to focus on the desks as much as possible facing forward, remove the flexible seating, just trying to keep that social distancing. So once we have the timeline, and I'll get to the timeline here in a minute, but once we have those class sizes in place, that will help us know kind of how we can space those out a little bit. So again, talk about the face coverings. Students and staff will wear the face coverings and social distancing, or when it's not possible. So, and I gave those examples: hallways, buses, all those things. Hand washing, use of hand sanitizer. We have bought a lot of hand sanitizer. You cannot imagine how much hand sanitizer we have. And so we will encourage and have frequent hand washing schedules in the classrooms, and then of course arrival and any transitions will be washing hands and using hand sanitizer. So, and then the disinfection, again, nightly is quite an extensive process with the disinfection, but then throughout the day we'll do the touch points in the buildings with custodial staff and the teachers in the classroom too. They'll have their own in those high touch areas. So symptom checks is something also. So we're going to ask staff and students to check their temperatures prior to coming to school each day. And then give them, of course, the symptoms and what to look for, and to stay home if they have symptoms, obviously. So, and then students, we will start the day with a temp check in the classrooms, with the touchless temp check in the classrooms to verify where they're at. So. Just to talk a little bit about attendance, I know this has been an issue in the past. We are not going to have attendance incentives, so we're going to suspend attendance incentives, including all the way through K through 12. So virtual attendance is set by the state at 94%. So if a student chooses to be online, or a family chooses their student to be online, it's 94% if they complete the course. So it doesn't say they have to pass the course, but they have to complete the course. A plus students will earn 95%. That's a requirement of the A plus program. So that's set up by the State Board of Education. So that's how they came to that number. And then the activities, we're going to follow MSHA guidelines regarding activities. So basically, what they say is, if your entire district is virtual and not providing any online education, that you can't have activities. So we will provide in-person activities. We are also going to tell families that if they choose virtual, that they're eligible to participate. It's going to reduce our contact numbers, and will that's probably a bone of contention with some people. Well, I can stay home and I can choose to participate in activities. Yes, most schools are choosing that option. It reduces your caseload in your contact points in the school building. Also can help with any other issues that you might face. So and possibly avoid discrimination situations as well. So this is our timeline. That's the next slide there. So July 29th, tomorrow's family received the plan. It's going to be posted on the district website. Again, I want to compliment our task force. They did a wonderful job. And also compliment Jill, because everybody knows what a great job she does. But she ties all this stuff together, puts it on the website. She makes it look really good. So she did a really good job of doing that. So tomorrow, families will receive the plan. It'll be posted on the district website. July 30th, which is Thursday, we're going to open up registration and residency sent to the families. And then we are going to ask that by August 5th, so we're going to give them a week, that they choose via survey which that they want to obtain, how they want to obtain that education for their children. And that helps us with staffing and class sizes, right? We need to know a little bit ahead of time so we can plan if we have to redistribute kids to different classes and those type of things. So August 24th is the first day of school. And that's our plan for right now. So it's kind of it in a nutshell. It's a lot longer than that. It's 16 pages long, the actual plan itself. This is just the slides and kind of presents the overall synopsis of what it's going to look like. There will be situations where, students are able to social distance in a classroom where the teacher is providing direct instruction and the teacher's 6 feet away. They can take their masks off. There are going to be plenty of opportunities for that, so that students can be mask free and those type of things. But again, we still we're protecting our staff and our students. So we know that students are, even though they're susceptible to the virus, they're the least susceptible probably to the severe aspects of the virus. We do have staff members and staff members' families who are more susceptible. So we are going to tell our staff members that, if you have those susceptibilities in your home, that you can tell your class that they are required to wear masks. And if that's the situation, then parents don't want to be that tied down, I guess, so to speak, to the face coverings, then we can try to reassign them to a different class. That's another option. And virtual, again, is always an option. But there are going to be staff members who need additional layers of protection. And so we tried in these plans to identify layers of protection, understanding that nothing is perfect. We're just doing the best that we can. Our plan doesn't look the same as every other plan. It doesn't look the same as Pleasant Hill's plan. It doesn't look the same as Ray-Peck's plan. This is a plan that's unique to Harrisonville, and we think will be the most successful for most of our children. Again, it's not perfect, and it may have to change on the fly, and we understand that. And we're prepared to make those changes as they come to us. But with that in mind, questions?
I just have to say, like you did, Paul, personal thank you to everybody that was a member of that task force and put this plan together. I know it was hours and hours of planning and trying to balance everything together. So my hat off to everybody that was a member of that task force. Thank you so much for all the hard work that you did for that. And of course to Jill as well for putting this together. Do we have any concern that districts outside of ours will try to access like our virtual learning, where we would have to basically teach that kid? I know that was something when we first talked about having the virtual learning set up, that we would have to teach anybody that wanted to take one of our classes.
No, they still have to enroll. So
Okay.
to enroll, they have to prove residency. So
Okay.
yeah, it's the same residency process.
Do you have a breakdown of, I think you had said at one point there were about 75% were sending their kids to school. What, do you have a breakdown of K through 3?
I'm not sure if we've got that on there or not.
Go to click that.
Go to the plan.
Since that's going to be on the,
Let's see. We can access it if you click on that link on the presentation.
okay.
Then it'll go down to
Family survey results.
There it is.
the family survey results right there. Did you click on
Okay,
that?
no, I
Okay,
wasn't.
we'll scroll down all the way to the bottom. There you go.
Oh,
Click on
hi
that.
there, sure.
There you go. And then right on the left-hand side, family survey results.
Okay, perfect.
It's not broke down by grade yet.
Yeah,
No, not part
Not,
of
not
that.
yet.
Okay.
we broke it down.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
August 5th.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I mean, I'm just curious, since the learning style is different for K
Oh,
through
yeah.
3, that, just for my information, how many
Right.
kids are affected by that?
And then to reiterate on the activities, because we're doing basically the hybrid where we've got either in person or virtual, the families that have kids that elect to go virtual will still have the opportunity to participate in those sports.
Correct.
Okay.
And just to correct, it's not hybrid. So a hybrid model is like you come one day, A through M come one day, and N through Z come Tuesday, or so that's where they break the whole district into two, and they come on different days. We're not doing that. We're here 5
Okay.
days a week. So there
I
are
was thinking it
districts
was
around
either-
us that are doing that, and that's a true hybrid model because then on those days when the students are not in session, they are expected to do online coursework. So
Gotcha.
my kids, last name M, they would be here on Monday and Tuesday. Well, then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they would be expected to do their work from home, which would work okay for our secondary students. It does present a real problem for our younger kids, and we've tried to incorporate the rationale with that too. That we don't, our community is set up with we don't have neighborhood schools, right? So it's K through 12, and you go to specific schools based on your grade level. So it makes it more difficult for those groups to find some place for their kids to go during those times. And then we have to, we have staff members with kids, and what do they do with their kids? It presents a lot of problems. Not to say that, again, some point if our caseloads go up and keep continuing to go up, that we might have to look at other options too. So, but that option's not on the table right now. So, and one thing I failed to mention that I did want to talk about just a little bit was, what are the trigger points, right? So how do we know when we're not going to be in session anymore? And so there is a recommendation, what was the name of that organization that made that recommendation? I wrote that down just so I could share that with you. The Missouri Center for Public Health Excellence gave the triggers. And so the triggers that they have assigned right now, and this could change, again, they even said this in their document, is 5% in a day. So if a building experiences 5% of the students positive in a day, that would be a reason to close the building down for 2 weeks. 5% of our high school is 40 kids. Just to tell you where we're at right now, there are roughly, in the last 14 days, so that active period, not in one day, but 14 days, there are 19 students aged 15 to 19 that are considered positive in Harrisonville. That's not one day. Again, so their recommendation is 5% in one day. So getting from 19 to 40 is still quite a bit of a jump. 3% over 2 days, which would be 24 on one day and 24 on the next day. That would be a 3% jump over 2 days, or a 2% jump over 3 days, which would be 16, 16, 16. So we haven't, we're not at those numbers yet. But that's kind of the trigger points of how do we know when we're going all virtual. And you've seen some schools that are starting that way. I've heard Grandview is starting all virtual. Center School District is starting all virtual. Hickman Mills, Kansas City Public. So there are schools that are starting all virtual. I don't know what their rationale was, but I think the rationale that we would use, the trigger points that we would use, are based on that document that is the Missouri Center for Public Health. So it gives us some solid data to use to support that. The other thing is the health department can come in and say, you got too many, just come in and say you got too many cases, we're going to shut you down. So there can be cases where, let's say, a classroom has to be quarantined. Let's say there's the contact tracing in the classroom comes back that all the students are considered exposed. So then we would want that classroom to be quarantined, and then the teacher could be quarantined as well, and still, if they were symptom free and healthy, they could still provide an education through Google. That is the platform that we would use, K through 12. That's the platform that we would use for a short-term leave. And that's what we call a quarantine, is a short-term leave. That is different than a all virtual education. That may happen. We may have 3 students in a class that have to be quarantined for 14 days or whatever the case may be. And then they would be that short term. They would still interact with their teacher over those 14 days, kind of like when we were kids, and some of us are a little older, I should say me, not all of us. But when we had chickenpox, when chickenpox was a thing, and you'd be out of school for a week, well, you'd get assigned a week's worth of homework, and if you had questions, you could call your teacher or whatever. Your parents could call your teacher. It's similar to that situation. So the quarantine environment would be different. It would not be through launch. It would not be through Odysseyware. It would be through Google, through our staff members providing the continued instruction. So that's a little different than what a true virtual for a semester would look like. Once families commit, we're asking them to, they're going to be committed for a semester. If they say we're starting virtual, we're going to commit them to that for a semester. We just can't, with the in out, we can't. It's too difficult for our staff to deal with that. It's too difficult for social distancing to provide separate rooms and all that kind of stuff. So that's a lot of stuff, I know.
It's a lot of stuff.
Again,
Well,
just
the work that the task force has done. I mean, you've got an impossible situation. You're making impossible plans. When it's going to change in a heartbeat, and it's not nameless, faceless children and staff. This is my kids. This is your kids. This is your kids and your grandkids. I mean, this is our families that this is affecting. It's our friends. It's our families that are teaching in the high schools and the elementary schools and that are coming into contact with this. I mean, this is a real and big thing. And what do you do with it? What do you do? And I think at this moment, you've made a phenomenal plan, knowing that it can change in a heartbeat, and you may have to redo the whole entire thing. It's just it has to be the living, breathing thing, because this is a living, breathing, fluid, changing by the end of the day thing. So I will agree with what Bing said, that I think your task force did a phenomenal job with an impossible situation and making an impossible plan. Any other questions or comments for Paul? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we need a motion to rescind the previous board policies. Anyone want to make the motion?
I'll make a motion to rescind, effective July 1, 2020, all existing current district policy and regulations.
second.
Any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we need a motion for Ed Council Guide Services.
I would like it noted that Nancy said she would make this motion and read every single one of these, letter and number, and she is not here today.
So since she's not here, I'll make the motion to adopt the following EGS, which is our Ed Council Guide Services, as presented and listed on our agenda.
Second.
Good job.
Good job.
Do we have any questions or comments on this? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll need a motion for the 2020-21 handbooks.
Move to approve the 2020-2021 Student Handbook, Employee Manual, and Board Manual as presented.
Second.
Questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Selection of school attorney. We need a motion, please.
Make the motion to select Dwayne Martin with Ed Counsel LLC as the district attorney / law firm.
Second.
Second.
Questions or discussions on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
They've been acting as our attorney for what? How many years now?
Back when Todd was here, he
So,
hired him.
forever.
For decades.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
SRO contract. We need a motion.
I move to approve the contract with the City of Harrisonville for school resource officers for the 2021 school year as presented.
Second.
I want to note that there's just a slight increase, but Chief Hofer is here to answer any questions, and I agree with him that we have not seen an increase in a long time. I think it's justifiable, but they do a great job for us. We're very happy with their services.
Anybody have any questions for Chief Hofer? Okay.
It's going to remain the two. We're not increasing or decreasing officers. It's going to remain the same. Okay.
Any other questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And resolution to authorize selling general obligation bonds. We get a motion?
Move to
Very
approve.
nice to
Move
see
to
you all
approve.
this evening.
We're gonna
We're going to make the motion
motion
first,
and,
Brad.
and approve it,
Oh,
and
you're
then, yep. Just 1 second.
Move to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of $10 million in general obligation bonds, Series 2020.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
All right. Very nice to see you all again. I'm Brad Wegman with All-J Hart & Company. With me is Dr. Wesley Townsend.
Thank you.
Been out to several of the meetings as well, former superintendent at Pleasant Hill. But a new face this evening behind the mask is Matt Haug. He's interning with our firm this summer. He's a student out of the University of Arkansas. He's actually interned with our firm several summers in a row now. He's doing the accounting program at the University of Arkansas. So he's out tonight. I want to start off by congratulating you all once again on the success of the June election. We have good news to report from the last time that we were out on June 30th. We marketed the bonds subject to the approval of the resolution this evening. Start out with local banks, and the district received support from Commerce Bank and Country Club Bank for some banks in the area to step up to really help us achieve what we feel are very competitive interest rates, which we'll go through shortly. But in addition to the competitive interest rates, maintaining a short call feature of 5 years on this first piece of $10 million to allow you to make prepayments to save on interest expense, or since the bonds are being sold at a premium, within 5 years you'll be able to potentially refund that premium. And if rates stay low, depending on what the economy does, over the next several years, you're in a great position to get the upfront money from the premium right now for your projects, but then have the flexibility to make prepayments or refund it within 5 years. Another thing that we'd like to point out is this is the best municipal bond market we've seen due to the rates in the market with the COVID and the uncertainty with the stock market. The 10-year notes, the benchmark rate that we look at, similar to Dow Jones Industrial Average or S&P 500 in stock market. As we discussed last time on June 30th at the workshop, the 10-year note over 60 years it averages 6%, and right now it's been closing around 0.59, 0.6%. So it's basically 10 cents on the dollar. So it's a tremendous time to be borrowing. And when Larry marketed the bonds, starting with banks in the area, we were able to push that reoffered yield down lower, and that generated $242,000 additional premium for your projects above and beyond what we anticipated. Our rates were conservative at June 30th, so we knew we were confident we could beat that, but we were very happy with our yield to generate that extra $242,000, almost $250,000 more on just this first piece. So we'll go ahead and go through the packet of information, just touch on the highlights of some of the final numbers. If you have any questions at any time, please feel free to ask. The first handout in the packet is the Standard & Poor's rating rationale. The bonds are participating in a direct deposit program. In participation in that program is where you get the AA plus rating, state aid's intercepted to go directly to the bondholders. And participating in that program, like your other bond issues, is where the AA plus rating comes from. The next sheet of paper, titled Schedule 4, is the proposed debt service schedule for the 2020 bonds of $10 million. The date column, the first date listed is August 12th. That's the proposed closing date of the financing, when your proceeds will be wired to your local bank account and available for your construction projects. The principal payments, we're starting with the back maturities first, 2036 to 2040, and we've actually grouped those into two blocks, all at that 5% interest rate, but the investors are paying the premium on the bonds, which totals $1,752,075, which is almost $250,000 more than we anticipated. But factoring in the premium the investors are paying to buy that 5% interest rate from the district, we have highlighted the bond yield for arbitrage purposes. Factoring in that premium, your effective interest rate is basically 1.048% on this financing. So on the next page, Schedule 4A on page 2 just highlights the 5-year call feature on this financing. So you're eligible to refinance or prepay within 5 years. And then Schedule 4B on page 3 is the pricing summary. It goes through some of the details of how that premium works. So on page 3 on Schedule 4B, we have the two terms, the coupon column, 5%. But then to the right of the coupon column is the yield column, which is how the bonds are priced to that 5-year call date. So the yield on the first block is 1%. The second block maturing in 2040, 1.075%. In our earlier projections, we had 1.6%. And so that going from that yield of 1.6% to 1% and 1.075 is how we arrived at $242,000 more premium. To the right of the yield column in the middle is the maturity value. The district's repaying just $10 million, but the investors are paying the price column, which is above 100%, 117 times the maturity value column. And so that's multiplying those two is how we arrive at the dollar price column, the far right-hand column on the right side of the page. So that's the dollar price is what the investor is paying the district for the $10 million. And subtracting those two is how we arrive at that premium of $1,752,075 that the investors are paying. The other key item we'd like to point out is the YTM column. Assuming the bonds are never refinanced or prepaid, factoring in that $1.7 million premium, and they remain outstanding all the way till maturity, your worst case scenario interest rate is 3.57 or 3.738%. On the next page, Schedule 4C, we have highlighted in yellow the first $10 million installment, since we have these locked in tonight by the resolution. $10 million, $1.7 million of premium. So the net amount deposited to your construction fund coming up in August will be $11,621,875 net of the cost of issuance. And then we have to the right of that, the projections for the second $10 million installment, and then the final $2.7 million in 22, which we'll use $2,060,000 of that final 2.7 piece to prepay the lease, and then about just short of $600,000 available for projects. So all in all, we're anticipating $3.3 million of premium, up just over. We had just over $3 million previously. Now $3.3 million, so $23,687,000 potentially for your projects, $2,060,000 to pay off the lease. So overall, you're really issuing these bonds at a great time to take advantage of these yields. The legal size sheet of paper next is the updated statement of cash flows. We have your assessed valuation on the far left-hand side of the page, growing at a rate of 2% a year. Then in light green, we have the revenues from the debt service fund levy, with that reduction from the ballot language going down from $1.17 to $1.07. Then in light blue, we have the payments on the bond issues, including the 3 installments for the $22.7 million, with the $10 million approved this evening being scheduled for. And the 2 columns we like to focus on is that purple column, balances in debt service count, and then the dark blue column, the debt service payments totaled. And we've isolated and blown those up on page 6 just to see them a bit better. And so with the $22.7 million, with the 10-cent reduction in your debt service fund levy, your purple column are your balances that are left over each year after you make your payments on all your bonds, including the new $22.7 million. And so that's the amount left over, so you're in a great position. And any given year, the state auditor looks at what's your ending balance versus your upcoming payments. So this year in 2020, $2,190,000, diagonally down 2 years, $2,179,000, and then $2.8 million. And so your balances track slightly below your payments for a few years, so that levy is healthy for your Form C calculation. But then before too long, it starts to exceed it, then it falls back in place. But probably within 6 to 7 years before you'd be in a position for another no tax increase proposal, assuming that the assessed valuation just grows at 2%. If you grow more than 2%, it would probably be within 5 years when you'd be in a position for another bond issue. Or you could utilize the 5-year call feature on this financing or other call features in your existing financings to make prepayments and save on interest expense. Overall, though, you're in a great position with your levy to handle these as without increasing taxes. So that levy generates more than enough revenue to accommodate these new payments. The next legal size sheet of paper I'll go over before I turn it over to Wesley. It's a comparison of interest rates. We have your interest rates this evening on the far left-hand side. To the left of yours, the Bloomberg AA plus yield curve, which is a national average, which isn't quite apples to apples. But the one thing we'd really like to draw your attention to this evening is Larry's been the first one in the market every year when the April election pushed to June. We like to move quickly and get our school districts' financings marketed to beat the rush of other schools around the state to try to push the interest rates lower. And looking around, we've really been the only firm issuing school bonds in the state. We had 49 out of 55 bond issues and levy issues pass. So we've been working to crank it out and take advantage of these historically low interest rates. And we haven't really had very good competitive scales to look at by any other firm other than ours. So we looked at 2 financings from Stiefel that were actually Illinois, which isn't quite apples to apples. But recently, today, financing for Excelsior Springs school districts. School district hit the Bloomberg terminal. And so we compare very favorably to that financing. It's a similar structure with 5% coupon rates to generate premiums for their projects, but the pricing of the bonds is the middle number, the yield to the call date, and where we're 5% to yield 1%, they're 5 to yield 1.37. Then in 2040, 5% to yield 1.075, they're 5 to yield 1.8. And the call feature of your bonds is 5 years, 2025, where Theirs is 2030, so it's a 10-year call feature. So you're much earlier getting lower yields to your call date, and then much earlier to potentially refinance out of that 5% interest rate much sooner. The third column is the yield to maturity, but it's actually somewhat counterintuitive because it assumes the longer the call feature is, the more premiums generated, and it assumes you don't spend that money on projects, you use it to prepay your bonds on the call date. So that number always skews because it doesn't really, if we had no call feature at all, you wouldn't even have a third number there. It would just be 5 yield 1. So that we put it on there, but it's not really an accurate pricing, somewhat counterintuitive. So that's the middle number is the one that we compare to and the bonds are priced on. So overall, we were very happy with how much lower your yield to a call date was with a 5-year shorter call feature. And that's due in large part to the banks in the area stepping up. And so Commerce Bank and Country Club Bank participating was very helpful to both have the short call feature, but then also very low yields to generate that additional premium for your projects.
I'll go over the last two documents. The next one is the closing procedures. And the front sheet of that is a distribution list. And on the second page, item number 1, you see the closing date is on August 12th. And item number 2 specifies that $11,621,875 will be wired on that day to the Harrisonville bank account. And that represents the $10 million bond proceeds plus the reoffering premium less the underwriter's discount and cost of issuance. The rest of the items are kind of specifics of who does what on that day and during the closing process. You skip a couple pages back. It has the sources and uses of funds that Brad went over again, describing where every dollar goes. And the final page is the journal entries that the bookkeeper will need to enter these into the financial accounting system. The next document is the official statement. And this is the document that investors get if they're interested in purchasing the bond. And it describes the bonds. It just has the financial and enrollment data and everything about the district. So it's a lot of information about the bonds and Harrisonville School District. The next is the actual resolution that needs board action to proceed with this sale. If you'll skip a few pages in, on page 1, paragraph of all capital letters. That's a summary of the entire resolution, and I'll give you a minute to read through that, but basically it authorizes the issuance of the $10 million bonds, and then for the purpose of, then it has your exact language that came out of your ballot language for what the money can be spent on. Provides for the levy and collection of the tax to pay it, participating in the direct deposit program, so it kind of summarizes everything that's in the resolution. So a few more sections I want to point out on page 4, section 2.2 is a description of the bonds. And again, it has the maturity years and amounts, the coupon, and the yield to call percentages that Brad was explaining earlier.
I have a real quick question here. It's mentioned that we're going to repay a portion of our existing financing. Is that all going to be wiped out with this first?
That'll be your last section because your lease purchase isn't callable until 2022. So that'll be about part of that last $2.2 million in 2022.
I think we wanted to repay, what was it, 900,000 almost $1 million? Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's.
2.7.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're doing the 22.7 and 10 million this calendar year, then 10 million can be issued as soon as January, first week in January, but we'll time it to match with your construction draws. So we'll do 10, 10, and then the final 2.7 we'll issue in 2022 as soon as January is when we can issue that, but we'll time that piece to line up, as Wesley noted, with that lease financing is not callable until 22. So the last $2.7 million installment, we'll use the majority of that to prepay. We can prepay that entire lease financing. I think that'd be like $2,060,000. I think is the amount of the final $2.7 million that we would allocate to that prepayment. And then there may be depending on how we structure that. So yeah, we would $2,060,000 would be to pay off the entire lease with the last installment, and then potentially have about $600,000 left over for other construction projects of the 2.7 above and beyond paying off the entire lease financing, which will help free up some operating funds.
That's what,
Yeah, that'll help
that's
your
what I was thinking,
2022 budget, definitely free up those operating funds. On page 9, section 3.1, it specifies the optional redemption. These can be called at any time after March 1, 2025, at the option of the district, and that's very important because you can call it in whole or in part at any time from that day on, is when it's beneficial to the district. And the final section is page 23 at the very bottom, 11.5. This section specifies that it is designated as a bank qualified and tax exempt bond. Any questions about the resolution? And the final document, I won't go into much detail, but it's for the district. It's a draft news release, kind of summarizing everything we discussed tonight. So you can use it and revise it and use it however you see fit.
So yeah, and then once again, just a recap from the June meeting, by splitting it, the 22.7 and the 10, 10 to 2.7, with interest rates not earning much versus the rate you'd be paying, it saves about $400,000 in interest expense by timing it up and issuing it in installments instead of all at once.
All right, are there any questions? Okay, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is roll call, roll call. You're right, I even have that written down. Okay.
Brittany? Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Tina?
Yes.
Cameron?
Yes.
Doug A?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, have a good evening.